Hey everybody, welcome back to another Dragon Ball Super Sparking Zero video. Today we're actually going to be going over something a little different than my ranked videos that I normally do. So the game actually releases either tonight or tomorrow, I don't really remember. But I feel as though there are going to be a lot of new sprouting players that are going to be entering the scene with a lot of questions on how the defensive mechanics work in the game. I'm not exactly a expert at them quite yet, and I'm still a little new to the stuff myself because it's a little tiny bit different than how Tenkaichi 3 was, at least in my eyes, because I was like 5. But the game is pretty rough for new players, at least if you don't know where to look. The Piccolo training stuff is a really good indicator and way of showing what to do to get started, but I feel as though in terms of getting into the time chamber and just doing this training a little bit more on your own will be a lot more beneficial to you in the long run than doing it just with the Piccolo stuff. Now, there are two things that I really want to make important. One is that your character doesn't matter here as long as you're not playing Hercule. And two, the enemy character does matter here, and it should be two things. One, I recommend using a slower character to ease yourself into this, like Nappa, who I've been using to get started. And then just recently, I've been going into the faster picks like Whis and UI Goku. Any of these 10 stocks, like UI Goku, the Super Saiyan 4, Gogeta in general, you have Vegito. They will be really good for the faster portion. Characters like Nappa, Goldo, Yamcha will be better for the slower portion of this to just get your hands on it and feel around for how this is going to go for you. We can go ahead and start. I actually like the time chamber, least clutter on the screen. It's a lot of visual clarity for what we're going to be doing. So here we are. Now the first thing that we're going to want to do is actually go to our settings for the training settings in particular. We're going to go to gauge settings. We're going to set ours and the CPU health to max. And then we're going to go to opponent settings. And we're actually going to set the opponent's strategy to rush attacks. Why rush attacks? Well, rush attacks have a lot of variety of moments that you can actually use some of these counters in. And it'll actually give you a good representation of everything except for the beam vanishes that will happen to you from time to time from raw supers, but more importantly, the rush attacks for the melee combat. So we're going to go over this one at a time, starting with our perception counter. This one is just as simple as holding your perception button, which will be circle for PlayStation and B for Xbox. So as you can see, Nappa's beating me up without me guarding, which is fine. But if we actually are holding the perception button before he lands a hit, while it does drain ki, what it'll do is it'll knock him away and say, get off me for a second. This is really good to kind of just reestablish a neutral ground at the cost of a little bit of ki. Normally, there is a correct time to go ahead and do this. You should not just hold this button in neutral. It's a terrible idea. You will get punished for it. You will get supered. You will get grabbed. But as just a quick, like, hey, this isn't cool. I'm not really a fan of this. The perception button will be pretty good here. There's also something else that I want to go over. This is going to be called the Sonic Sway. The way that I proc this normally for me, because I'm not that great at it yet, is by holding the guard button, which in my case would be R1, and then pressing your perception button before the moment that you're actually going to get hit. Can you tech? Thank you. There we go. And as you can see, that'll drain ki, and what this is going to allow us to do is just keep our pressure up for a second on the enemy. Having more ki in this game is incredibly beneficial because if you have the chance to go sparking, typically you're going to want to take it if it's free. And normally if somebody is charging up their ki, if you have more, you're going to have the advantage that they're going to have to make a decision to either cut theirs short again or go after you. The next thing that we're going to go over is the super perception counter, and something important to note is that it's going to take a sparking stock every time you land it. So see, I'm at 6. We're going to go ahead and try to get it to proc. Here you go. I'm now at 5, and what this is going to do is it's going to stagger him, returning me to my turn for the most part. I don't know if It's just neutral, but every time I've ever used it, I've pretty much been able to get a free hit. Maybe I'm playing against AI online and they just don't know what they're doing or how to hold a controller. The next one that we're going to go over is actually the super counter, I think is what it's called. And this one is actually going to be as simple as pressing your left stick forward, your whatever movement button it is forward, and then pressing your basic attack button at the exact moment of impact of the attack. So you can actually use this in certain strings, or well, most strings actually. This will work for almost any attack, and there it is right there, and it'll knock them away. You can actually follow this up. Let's see if I can get that in here as well. You can actually follow this up with a follow-up attack. If you press your triangle or Y button, whatever your blast button is, will help you follow this up. Why is this good? It gives you some options. For instance, if I decide that if I can land the attack, for instance, if I give me a second, it'll come to me. Don't worry, I'll get there. There we go. If I decide that instead of doing that, I want to charge a little bit, maybe even hit sparking, it's a good way to do that. It'll give you a little time, or you can go for some damage, or you can go for a combo. There is one thing that can counter it kind of hard, though, and that is another Z counter. But, or Super Perception, I believe, also works. But it's also the other counter. I call these flash counters. It escapes me what the actual name is, but that's what I call it, is a flash counter. This one is just as simple as pressing guard before the moment of impact. So you can see, boom, we're there, and this is much of the same. We can follow up, or we can go ahead and start charging. It'll give us a brief moment of just escape. Typically, you're gonna want to go for more damage. Now, there is one thing to note, is that the enemy can actually flash counter your flash counter, leaving you in a kind of bad spot, and it could be a chain of them going back and forth over and over again. It does drain key to use, so that is another important thing to take note of. Another thing that we're going to go over is that you can actually use this at the start of an attack as well. I'm not as great at it as the startup, but as you can see, right there, we did it. And now we are behind Nappa, and we just get free damage, pretty much. This one is also really good. And normally, if your Z counter fails, this is the one that you're going to want to do. It's just pretty good for that kind of thing. And as you can see, we can go straight into damage. Because it takes a little moment to get off the floor. I believe this connects 9 times out of 10. I could be wrong here. But I'm super duper glad that we could have gotten all that. There is one other thing that I want to actually go over. This one is going to be here in the main menu. We're going to go to settings, and we're going to go to controls and camera. So the biggest thing that we're looking for here is actually going to be, let me find it, over here. It's going to be an accessibility. This is the biggest thing that has caught me in a situation of panic a lot. Guard assist might be the worst thing in the game. This should be off for everybody. Normally it's on, turn it off. I don't know why. I've had multiple instances where this actually messes up my flash counter. This has in the past made a input that I didn't want come out. Like, I just don't get to throw out my super that I wanted, and instead I am blocking for whatever reason. Because what this will actually do is, while you're not pressing a button, you will block. And while on paper that sounds good, like I said, it can actually delay an input in certain situations, and I freaking hate it. And it actually makes your flash counters way easier. So much easier. So please, 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 please turn this off. I beg of you. It'll make it so much easier for you in the long run. It might be a little weird at first, but I promise it is nothing but greatness after you turn it off. With all that being said, this one's a short one, I know. But I hope that you guys were able to see what I was talking about a little bit. I am so excited to see everybody getting the game and then putting the work in and putting the time in and seeing how good people can be. With all that being said, if you're watching in the morning, please have a wonderful rest of your day. If you're watching at night, get your full 8 hours. If you're watching in the afternoon, please eat your lunch. It's super important. Love you guys so much. I hope you're having as much fun with the game as I am. I'll talk to you later. Goodbye.